Welcome to Fancounters. My name's Nick. You can follow us on social media at Fancounters Live. We're also on Facebook if you search our private group, Sharpie Nation, or we have a very large group by searching Fancounters. You can also email us your comments or questions at hello@fancounters.com. If you have a guest that you want to have on the show or something you want to ask a future guest, send us an email and we'll do our best to get that guest on the show and ask your question as well. Now, this week we've got something pretty special for you. We are back with Brian Nelson Jr., who's here from the Leave It To Beaver Facebook groups, and he brought us another great guest. How you doing, Brian?
I'm doing pretty good, Nick. How are you?
I'm doing great.
Excellent.
Now, you are really great at getting us some very awesome guests, and you have not let us down again today. Who do you got today for us?
Well, today I have Janice Kent, who played Mary Ellen Rogers in the new Leave It To Beaver. Before that, it was called Still the Beaver, after the Still the Beaver pilot movie that was done in March of 1983. And yeah, she played Wally's wife, and as many know, Pamela Baird played Mary Ellen, one of Wally's girlfriends in the original show.
That is awesome. And she also has some ties to other guests we've had on the show. We talked a few weeks back with Cindy Bagel, who was the writer on the new Leave to Beaver, but she also wrote the Flintstones movie. Well, Janice Kent had a part in the Flintstones.
That's right.
So that's pretty cool. She also has some ties to some other guests that we've had on the show, and we are going to talk about all of that on Fan Counters today. So, without further ado, here is Janice Kent.
Coming to you from nowhere near the entertainment capital of the world, this is Fan Counters with Nick and Elizabeth on the Podfix Network.
There was this mob of people, and they're screaming my name.
Crazy fans.
Stop following me. Don't come around my house. If you do, the cops are going to be at yours.
If I'm having dinner with my wife, don't sit down at my table. Don't follow me into the bathroom.
Can I take a picture? We're going to, oh my God.
I think this guy wants to fight me. Ended up being a fan.
I'm the only one that's ever been on Sam Jackson and lived to tell about it.
Well, guess what? I have a big surprise for you.
That's why we call it Fan Counters.
I don't think you're going to last on the air very long.
How are you? I'm sorry I just missed your call.
Oh, not a problem. I just was in progress of sending you a message because I was going straight to voicemail.
No, here I am.
First, let's the holidays are here. Are there any holiday traditions that you have?
Oh gosh, you know what? It's really interesting. I did, but things have changed a lot in the last couple of years. I have a daughter. Which will kind of factor into a question you actually might want to know about directing, because she was born just right after Leave It To Beaver ended. And I really had a choice to make at that point. Well, because at that point, really, there were so few women directors, really many more now. But, it's a hard one position to be in even now, and then it was really tough. And I thought, well, there just wasn't enough of me to go around to be a mom for real this time. To get to your question about the holidays, now that she's grown, and she is actually, are you ready, a circus performer, a contortionist.
Wow!
And
wow!
Yeah, it's quite crazy. But I've actually learned a whole new world too through her. But she's performing, so she's not home. So the traditions are a little bit different. So we spend it a lot with family and friends that are still here. We don't really have a big family that's here, and so we get to go with a lot of friends and always spend it with her when she is in town. But she's usually busy performing, and she and her husband, who's also a performer, are traveling the country now. I wish they were coming out your way, but I think they're in St. Louis, which is not nearly as close to you. You could go to see
It
the
is
show.
closer
But
than
anyway,
it is. Yeah, it is closer than L.A. though.
That is closer than L.A. Yes,
Just a few hours. Yeah.
So the holidays are really fun, but they're very, kind of just really cozy with friends and family and like that.
Okay, so in our opening, we talked about some wonderful roles that you've gotten to play, in your career.
Yeah.
Which we're going to dive into in this interview. But before we go back into the past, let's talk about what you're doing these days. Are you still acting?
Oh yes, gosh. I mean, as much as I can, I I'm trying to think. The last TV thing I think was Castle, which unfortunately was canceled. I think I did the last season of it. It was a show on. I'm trying to think. Nathan Fillion was the star of it, and it was kind of a detective. He played a fiction writer or something who paired up with a detective to solve crimes. And so I was. I spent the last couple of TV things doing. Victims. I mean, I was like female victims in Criminal Minds. I was the wife held up at gunpoint, and in Castle, I had been kidnapped and tied up, and all these things. So that, and then I've just been doing some theater recently. I did a play here in Los Angeles, and so yeah. I mean, as much as I can, I'm still out there giving it a go. It's a very different world now because there's so many venues, of streaming and network and all of that. But I have really spent the last number of years too being an acting coach, and I guess the most. I'm also a certified life coach, so I do that work as well.
Tell us a little bit about that too. The life coach and the acting coach. We want to hear a little bit about what those things are like for you.
Oh, it's great. It actually started when my daughter was young, and it started through a referral. A friend of mine was a talent manager, and she had a client, and she said, the girl is very good, but I don't know, she's not booking. Would you take a look at it? And I went, oh, sure. So she came over, and she read with me, and I could really see what wasn't happening in the way she was preparing her auditions. I'd just been acting myself for so long, and I've had so many classes, and I've just trained in it for so long. And at that point, of course, I had directed a couple episodes of the show, so I was really pretty well versed to be able to tell her manager what wasn't happening. And from then on, she started referring people. So I then developed this sort of acting coaching, but mainly for auditions. Not that I was, just doing a scene study class where actors come in and do scenes from plays. I really never did that. What I did is I had individual clients who could come in, or actors who would come in to prepare an audition. So we would get the audition really ready for them to go, and then they'd walk out the door, and many of them booked series and co-stars and guest stars on different shows. And then I thought that it seemed to me, just because I had the way I approached understanding the characters that I was going to be playing, I found out about life coaching, and I thought, okay, let me see what that's like. Because I don't know, people would come for sort of life advice and things like that. And I got trained in it. And then I saw in the techniques. And then I saw that although you don't have to be certified to be a life coach in California, I guess you can just say, boom, I'm a life coach. It was recommended that you get a certification so that when and if someday you have to be licensed, you could already have the certification and kind of get grandfathered in. And I thought I wanted more study anyway. And what I did is I actually sort of coached people just pure life coaching, but I also have developed a technique to apply some of the life coaching techniques to acting. And because, of course, as an actor, you're portraying a person in life, whose life you're trying to portray.
Right.
So it made great sense to take that and apply it. So I'm in the process of, developing an online course to put out to everybody, and sort of put some of those ideas in play. Because for me, there's so many wonderful acting classes and acting classes online, and I've done a lot of Skype coaching as well. But I think I haven't quite seen this idea of these life coaching techniques applied to preparing a role. So I'm working on it.
So did you say you are certified now? You did take the classes to become?
Yes,
oh, that's
I did.
awesome.
Mm-hmm.
Very cool.
Yeah, I did. I got my certification, and you had to do a whole number of hours and coach people. And it's interesting because they did a lot of coaching by phone, and I was so used to working with actors face to face. They would come to a studio that I had, and I just thought, how are you going to coach on the phone? But it really taught me to listen in a certain way that I had never really learned before or thought about before. And it really was quite effective.
So, yeah, we ran into an interview you did with your husband, I think it was 2018 or so, and you mentioned that you have always had a passion for acting.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah, what prompted you to start acting, and was there any particular role?
You know, I got to say, I was just a kid that loved it from the out of the gate. I was 5 years old or something, and did the school play every year, and that was the highlight for me of the entire year. Was like, oh my goodness, here comes the school play. So once a year, and so that went on all the way through high school. And I have to tell you, I did have a crazy experience in high school that I think really was partly what was some of the launching. It was a play that I did. I think I might have been 16 or so. And it was a silly little melodrama play, where the hero, the villain is twirling his mustache and I'll get you, curse you, like that kind of thing. And I played the ugly sister. I had a big, huge false nose, and I really had ugly makeup on and whatever. But I don't remember what it is that I said, but I do know that it was a comedy. It was very, very silly, and the audience just laughed when I spoke. I opened my mouth, and the audience was just falling over themselves in laughter, and I was hooked. I was like, this is amazing, because it was just an amazing feeling that I could generate that. And I think that, not that it wasn't there before, it was there before, but it really cemented it. And then I did go to college for acting. I went to Emerson College in Boston, and there was a acting professor there who was a pretty strict, tough guy, and he came to me at one point. We had a talk and about what I was going to do, what was my future about all this, and he said a really profound thing to me, which was that I'm teaching a lot of people here, and I'm going to tell you there are very few that I actually think can really do this and make a life at it, and I think you were one of them. And I thought, whoa, wow. That was big stuff.
That's really cool. Yeah.
He was a toughie. So that's kind of really what started it. And then I went to New York.
Oh, cool.
And started doing television commercials. And at one time, I had 11 national television commercials running on the air.
Wow.
It was amazing.
When was your first commercial?
It was for Lysol. It was for
cool.
Lysol, and I played a housewife, and I was mopping the floor. And when I got cast, I think it was my first audition, and I got cast, and I had no idea what to do.
Oh no!
I was so scared. I got to the set and thought, oh my gosh! I didn't even know what a set was, because I had come from college and plays and had no training for film or television. And really, back then, they didn't do that in college. They really just didn't even have those courses available. So I got on the set and thought, okay, just look around and try not to look like you don't know what you're doing.
Right. That's pretty much how Christopher Lloyd got started. He was, a theater actor, and, then he moved to TV and then to movies.
Right. That was sort of the segue that it used to be. And then and back then too, if you were a TV actor, you were a TV actor. If you were a movie actor, you were a movie actor. It's not like now where everything is all together,
Right.
You can be everything. I did want to say, and just to go back, just because I'm very proud of this, in coaching, one of the person that probably you would know the best in terms of my acting coaching was that I was the on-set coach for Cyndi Lauper.
Wow. Oh, wow. That's really cool.
Yeah, it was a big thing to be asked by the studio to come and help her. She was doing a show called Bones, which ran for a long time on Fox, I think. And so she was playing a role, and the studio called me and said, look, she, is coming in, and I think it would be really helpful, and she would like someone to be on set with her, and would you do this? And I was like, oh, my gosh, for sure.
Right.
What fun. Yeah, and she was great. She was really great.
Well, going many years prior, I want to talk about your time on the new Leave It to Beaver, since Brian runs the official fan club for that group on Facebook.
Yeah, great.
So tell me a little bit about how you got the audition, maybe what the process was like, and then how you found out that you were going to be cast in this new series.
I was living in New York, because I had lived in California and I had done a lot of things. There was a lot of work, but it had sort of gotten kind of dry for me. And I'm from the East Coast, and I missed it, and I missed my family that was still there. And so I kind of thought, okay, that's it. I'm moving back. So I went back to New York, and just by happenstance, I needed to come back because I had stored some things in California, and I needed to come pick them up. So I came back and went to see the agents that were still representing me. And when I walked in, just to say hello and show my face, and, I'm going to be in New York, but whatever. They said, well, have you gone in to Universal on the new Leave It to Beaver? And I went, what? Oh, it was still the Beaver. I'm sorry, it was for the movie. Mm-hmm. And have you gone out? And I said, well, no, you're my agents. You should know. I didn't know. And they said, well, okay. I think it was a Thursday. And they said, go in and meet the casting director. And then if she likes you, we'll take it from there. I did. I met her. And that afternoon, she said, okay, go on in. And I was auditioning for Brian Levant and Nick Abdo, who were the original producers on the show. And they had given me a scene to do. And, of course, Tony was not there. Nobody was there from the cast. It was just someone reading with me. And and now I had a ticket, actually, to go back to New York the next day, which was a Friday. So my ticket was... I was booked to leave at whatever time, early in the afternoon or something. And I auditioned on a Thursday, and I left. And I don't think I even made it back to the place I was staying, which was maybe 10 minutes away and from Universal. And I got a phone call when I got there, and they said, you've got the part.
Wow.
And nothing had ever been this easy ever, I don't think. I don't know how I got so lucky, and I don't think, somehow the stars aligned, and I was like, wow. And they said, yes, and you start work on Monday. So needless to say, there went the ticket to New York, and there went going back to New York. I never went back and lived there.
Nothing like waiting till the very last minute to cast that part. Holy cow.
Exactly. And I think what it was, as Brian told me a long while after that, he said, we had really seen a lot of people. And I said, oh, I'm so glad that I didn't know that because I would have probably been, so nervous. But I think sometimes in casting, when they start in the very beginning, and if it's a fairly long process or they have a while, they do get a chance to see so many people. And, I think it's a little different than it was then now than it was then, because now everything is online. You can send in a self-taped audition. It's just, I don't know that they see as many people as they did then, but he did say we saw lots and lots of people, and you came in and you just were her. And I was like, wow, and I could see as time went on, and I became really part of that family, I understood why. It made sense because Barbara Billingsley and I became terrific friends, wonderful friends. And she once said to me, "Oh, I could see that you would play his wife, and I can see that you would be my daughter-in-law." It was such a compliment, and it was also, it felt right. It really did feel right. So lucky me.
Well, and and I don't know if you knew or not, if you were the last person they saw. You were definitely one of the last people, but
Probably, yeah.
that's exactly like Jerry when he got the part as a kid. He was the last person they saw, and
Wow.
because he wanted to go to a Boy Scout meeting instead, he was kind of fidgety, and he didn't seem like he wanted to be there, and the producer said, "What's wrong?" And he said, I got to get to my Cub Scout meeting. So they just let him go. He didn't do any audition or anything, and he got the part.
Right. Because he just was that kid, and he was, boy, he certainly was. But I see that, yeah. That's so interesting. I didn't know that. That's great.
Oh, I know. Yeah. So now on the new show, all of the cast members, all of the adult cast members were, they were part of the cast in the original show. What was it like? Yeah. What was it like to be the only one that played, you were an outsider, and you had to kind of like jump in and be this person that was a character in the old show. How was it like to, going, kind of a part two question. What was it like to play Mary Ellen? What did you do to prepare for that role?
Well, I'll tell you what I didn't do. I did not go back. First of all, I didn't have access to go back to find the old Leave It To Beavers the way we do now with computers, because we didn't have that. So that I couldn't access, episodes that she had been in, unless it was just happenstance. And I just was, it was on television. Oh my goodness, there's an episode with Wally and Mary Ellen. So I didn't know much about her, to be honest with you, because I, as a kid, watched it, but I didn't watch it. I was one of three sisters. So my orientation was more for girls than it was about being brothers and being little boys. So I watched Father Knows Best. I kind of watched that show, and I was more there and a little bit more like that than Leave It To Beaver, although you couldn't not watch Leave It To Beaver because it was so famous and so big and so popular. So I knew it, but I just didn't know very much about that character, except, that they were kind of boyfriend-girlfriend. So when I went in to meet with everybody in the very beginning, because I had done a lot of other work as an actor all my life prior to that, I really went in to it kind of just like, this is a job. This is just another job. This is my job. And I went in and I met Tony, and I said, "Well, hi, I'm your wife." He said, "Well, hi," And so I think maybe because I came in kind of very, I was excited to meet them, don't get me wrong. I mean, it was quite famous. But I just kind of was more like, okay, here we are, and, we're going to go to work. And so we did. We did the movie, and it was nice. And they are, as I'm sure you've interviewed both Tony and Jerry, and I don't know if you've interviewed anybody else, but really nice, really, really nice people. And Tony and I just really grew to be quite good friends and very, very compatible to work together, and very easy. Very, very easy. And it was that way really sort of from the very beginning. So I had a very lucky break.
How long did being starstruck last?
Oh, in this case, as I said, for some reason, because,
See, it's hard. It was hard for me to ask that, too.
Good question, because there were different phases to it. I mean, in the very first days when I first went, it was like, oh my gosh, it was kind of wow. But then it went into work. But I'll tell you what and this sort of goes into sort of the Sam thing, because I wasn't known. And they all were.
Right.
I mean, including Lumpy and, everybody.
Yeah.
And he was a great, great friend also, Frank. But we did the Hollywood Christmas Parade. We had just started filming the show. We had done the movie, and about a year had gone by, I think, and at least a year. And then we were filming the show at Universal. So they asked us to be on a float on the Hollywood Christmas Parade, which usually I think takes place, or did at that point, I think the day after Thanksgiving. So there we were, and this was new to me, very new to me, that I would be, asked to do something like this. And got on the float, and it went down Hollywood Boulevard, and it was jammed with people. And when we were all standing on this float, like you see on the Rose Bowl or Thanksgiving Day parades, and when they recognized that it was Tony and Jerry and Barbara, the roar that went up from the crowd, I was just, and of course it wasn't for me, and I knew it wasn't for me because nobody knows who I am, but I was in that company, and I was just like, wow, they are so famous. Wow. And that really kind of made me look at them twice, kind of like, whoa, I guess this is amazing. Because I kept thinking, wow, this must be what it's like to be a rock star.
Wow.
Because that's really, the roar just kept going all the way down the street. And then one year I went to New York City with Barbara, and we were doing something for publicity, but Barbara and I went to the theater on Broadway, and we went to get tickets, just walked up and picked up some tickets at the ticket booth. And the guy at the ticket booth, Barbara was there at the booth, and I was sort of standing just right behind her. And the guy at the ticket booth looked up, and he was like, oh, that. And it was like, this is Cleaver. So she was like, hello, and I thought, gosh, I mean, and gracious as could be. Don't get me started on Barbara unless you really want to take up all this time, because I adored her. And she was just a lovely, lovely, gracious woman, and a really, a true professional. She just worked really hard, and I would come back from lunch. We always had lunch together, she and I, and I'd come back from lunch, and we'd go back on the sound stage, and there she would be in her pearls and her little dress and her high heels, and she'd be picking her way through the cables that led to the cameras and all the stuff, that, equipment that's on the set. And she'd be, kind of walking her way, and I'd kind of walk behind her and go, wow. I mean, this was a lady who could, certainly not have come back, but she loved doing the show, the new show. She loved it.
You did mention before that you had not seen much of the old Mary Ellen Rodgers, but in one episode called Yesterday's Gone, you and Wally go to your high school reunion. So
right.
In that episode, we see the original Mary Ellen Rodgers. So What was it like for you two? What did you guys chat about before the cameras were rolling? And just tell us about that moment.
I think I remember meeting her very briefly and kind of saying, hi, I guess I'm you, or something. How is that for you? And she said, really, no, I'm fine. She had retired from acting, and she said, no, it's real fun to be here, but, it's not my life anymore.
Okay.
And I think she lived in Texas or somewhere, and she was just very gracious and nice, and we just chatted very briefly, and really that's all I remember. I don't remember, what was Cheryl Holdridge. She was she had been a former Mouseketeer, and she had been on the old Leave It To Beaver show as one of his girlfriends, and in one of the episodes I remember that she came back when we were planning a high school reunion. Maybe it was that same episode. It might have been. And she comes to our house and kind of makes eyes at Wally and kind of starts up with him. And we have a cute little scene where I'm like, Keep your hands off him.
A lot of cute things happening there with the interactions between even the lesser-known characters. That's kind of cool.
It was. I mean, we had some very famous now. Giovanni Ribisi became a big movie and TV star, and he played our daughter Kalina Kiff's boyfriend, Duffy, and he was on many, many episodes. And, of course, Shannon Doherty and Christina Applegate. I mean, you guys, I think, know better than I do. So,
well, it's funny. It's funny you mentioned those two because it's when I saw her name. Well, Shannon Doherty looks nothing like Shannon Doherty. I mean, she's a little kid at that point.
Yeah.
Christina Applegate, same thing. Like one of them. The one episode, I believe it was Freddie was sent to military school, and they're saying goodbye in the rain. That she was hard to find because like same thing with Pamela Beard. Her name wasn't mentioned, but she was given a name in the credits. So it was like it's
you had to really know.
You had to really know who they were, and when when the kids, they're hard to pick them out. You know.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And the other episode she was in where Freddie needed a date for the dance. There were two that could have been her, and it was like, again, their names weren't mentioned, but they were given credit, and they had a name. So it was like, okay, is it this one? There's two blonde girls here. Which one is it? So, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. I have to go back and look myself if I can get a hold of all of this, which I'm guessing I'm going to get a chance because of Scott. Wonderful Scott.
Yeah, he's phenomenal with that. I'm glad he's doing that. That's really cool. I know you said you didn't, when you were growing up, you kind of saw the show, but you followed Fathers Know Best a little bit more than Leave It to Beaver. But is there any particular episode that stands out to you?
Oh, Leave It to Beaver. The one I remember was Jerry on the billboard.
in the cup.
Yep, in the cup.
The soup bowl. It's a soup bowl. Everyone says it's a teacup, but it's a soup bowl.
Oh, it's a soup bowl. That's right. Somehow I'm thinking it was a coffee cup or something. I couldn't remember. And then also Wally and his nose with the thing to keep his nose to make his nose flat.
When I was a kid, I always thought it was because he broke his nose.
Oh, like his way of changing his nose or something. No, I mean, and he was very, he was a teen heartthrob for sure. But for me, for some reason, I was much more focused on the other show. And I think it really helped me because when I actually got to meet them, I met them more as people. Also, so many years had gone by, you know what I mean? So I met them, and they were sort of like, wow, we're back. It was like, so, for them they were very, very humble and down to earth and not with any kind of star stuff around them. None of them. So that because of that, it was so welcoming.
It's interesting, Wally, he's like, the star, he's popular with the girls, and Tony Dow, speaking with him a few weeks ago, he's a pretty modest guy, kind of laid back and
very modest.
And it's kind of cool to see that because Jerry's a more outgoing type person, but in their characters, it's a complete switch.
Yeah.
Yes, it's true. It's true. They're in life, they're very different. Tony is enormously modest and retiring and very self-deprecating, and not that Jerry isn't, because but he's just more, I don't know, he's more comfortable talking, I think, out to people and all. But I've seen Tony and I did a play together. It was Love Letters, and we did it, I don't know, maybe in the 90s. I'm forgetting exactly when, but we did it out here. And I would see them, he and Lauren, socially. I haven't in a little while, but we do keep in touch. Very, very fond of each other. I mean, I've got a thing to put out to you guys because I think we should start a petition to bring it back.
Oh, yes. I couldn't agree with you more. I'm right there with you.
Well, I know that it is that would be up to Brian Levant, and I haven't spoken to Brian in a while. We've kept in touch often too, but it's been, time and the tides, and it's been a while. But I know there's a whole corporate thing with Universal. It's one of those things where some television series just kind of got caught in the crossfires or something, just corporate, all the business part of it. And I think the new Leave It To Beaver is unfortunately one of those casualties. Although I thought, well, someone said to me, why don't you do hashtag bring back NLI?
Bring back the show. Yeah, I actually, that's the reason why I created that page, and I created it over a decade ago. And and the problem with the show is it isn't the quality. I mean, I love that show. It's funny because I started watching that show. We didn't have the Disney Channel, so I wasn't able to see the original Still the Beavers, but I was able to see them later on. But the funny thing is I started watching Leave It to Beaver one day. I wasn't feeling good. I was at a babysitter's house that day, and I ended up having to lay down and watch TV, and it just happened to be Leave It to Beaver was on, and I liked it, and it was there was 2 on in a row. So then I picked the channel, I made a note what the channel was, and I just continued watching it, and I loved it ever since. And then I all of a sudden seen commercials for this new show. And at that time, I mean, the first time I saw the new show was I didn't even see the movie until it was chopped up in 4 sequences for syndication. Right. But yeah, and I didn't even see the movie till someone sold it on eBay.
Exactly. And it was such a weird that you bring that up, because in a way it was a very interesting experience to be working and acting in Hollywood at Universal Studios here, and being on a soundstage and going to work, which was a dream of mine. I mean, don't get me wrong, I was floating to work, but the soundstage, I would be going to work, and the soundstage next door was, I'm trying to remember the name of the show, and I don't remember, but at the time it was a big hit on network television. And I would look over and I would sometimes see whoever it was. I'm really sorry, it's just slipping my mind what show it was. But whatever it was, I kept thinking, this is so interesting, because here I am having the same kind of basic work experience that these other actors are having, on the next soundstage. And the world really knows who they are because it's on network television. And here we are doing a show on something that at that point was so new. When they called me, I mean, this was kind of crazy, but I know I'm jumping all over the place, but we had done a movie, and we didn't think it was being picked up to series, which was what the intention was originally from CBS. And so I went off to England to study Shakespeare. And I was just for really a summer course, but I was there for about 3 months. And I, had gotten this word that, yes, it's going to be a series. And I said, where? And they said, cable. And I was like, what's cable? What is that?
I don't have that.
We didn't have that. And so they said, well, it's going to be partly the Disney Channel. And I went, okay. And so I came back from England, literally, I think the night before that we were to start filming the very first episode, or we were actually filming the introduction. And so we were all kind of like, okay, I guess we're going to be someplace. We don't know where, It was kind of a strange thing, but you're absolutely right. It got lost in kind of that, that shuffle, not only not being able to be seen when it was airing, but also now, kind of in, I don't know where, in the basement someplace at Universal, that they just never promoted it. And I kept thinking it might come back out at those Nick at Night, or, those channels. That's
what always my hope was it, to end up on those nostalgic channels, things like that. But
yeah.
But unfortunately,
but I don't know if doing I don't know if anything would work, to be honest with you, probably not. But if anybody wants to start a hashtag or a petition or something,
I've been starting that petition to get the audience. A lot of, like I said, even the original show fans don't even know about the show. That's the problem. But that movie that was done in 1997. I mean, that was like so bad. Right. It was really,
it wasn't good.
It wasn't good for the franchise. I think if they did a new series, I think it would revamp it. I think it would do it, which actually leads into next question. Actually,
what's that?
Well, it's funny that you mentioned that we should bring the show back, because we want to know. We asked Jerry Mathers and Tony Dow a few weeks ago the same question. What do you think the Cleavers would be doing if we brought the show back?
Oh my gosh. Well, we did an episode where everybody was in the future.
Yes.
And I think
that was kind of cool. Yeah.
I've forgotten whatever the name of that episode was.
It was called Still the New Leave It to Beaver.
Okay.
Yep.
I think, if I had my say about it, because unfortunately we don't have Barbara.
Wally would have to be a judge.
Wally would have to be a judge, and I think Mary Ellen would have gone out and now been running for some sort of town council or Mayfield mayor, or
or the editor of the paper
position. Yes, something like that. Something where she was really out and functioning with And I think Kelly obviously would be maybe the mom now and having kids of her own, and we'd be grandparents. And what would Beaver be doing? I'm not sure. What would he be doing? He might.
He probably would be running the firm. I
think he'd be running the firm, or he'd want to be retired and be golfing or something. I don't know.
He probably owns the firm. But he's out golfing because, he owns the firm, but he's retired. So
exactly.
He's all on the golf course.
Yeah, but we can't have all this glorious stuff. I mean, Beaver was a mess up his whole life. There's no way he's going to own a firm. He's got to be the one struggling and still working his way up, believing it's going to happen, and unable to retire. That's how I see him.
Or maybe he's got a grandchild that does what he did as a kid, and now he's got the knowledge, and now he can say, I was a struggler when I was a boy, and he could be the ward.
The one with the lessons and stuff.
Right.
It's true. Who was that? Was that Nick? Was that you who said he was a guy that was always messing up?
That was Nick. Yeah. Because he never could get his life on track. How many times did Barbara have to coach him into, starting a new job and all this stuff? So there's no way he's successful now.
So I think that would really be timely,
Right.
That would really be timely.
Well, we are hoping to talk to Brian Levant. He's on our short list of contacts. So hopefully he'll be on a future show and we can get the real deal.
A force unto himself. He is amazing. He really is. He came out of Happy Days, and I know you must have had this kind of conversation that, our show became, to me, a great of Leave It to Beaver and Happy Days, that feeling of the Gary Marshall kind of sensibility, and I liked that very much. I was really a big fan of Gary Marshall and all of that, all of those. As a matter of fact, I know Henry Winkler very well, where was I going with this? Oh, with Brian. Brian, what was so amazing about running it, he knew every single thing about it. He is like a mind, like a steel trap about all things. Leave It to Beaver. And he, the thing that was really such an amazing quality about Brian is that because this, I always felt like our show was like the little, the little train that could, the little engine that could. This was our show. It was like we were doing it, and it was such a sweet and good show, and it was kind of chugging along, and yet this big sort of Universal would say things like, okay, well, we're not going to pick it up, or there was this problem or that problem. And we would all be saying, "Oh, well, okay, I guess that's it."
And it won a couple
Brian
of
would be-
awards too.
Yes, but Brian would never hear the word no. He just didn't, we'd be saying, "But Brian, they're saying that it's not going to come back." And he would say, no, next year, this is what we're going to do. And I'd be like, but
You know,
he'd say,
I've had an admiration for that man for so many years, ever since I was a little kid,
Oh.
Because I was always a big continuity freak, even as a little kid. Like, they did this revival series, and I mean, he touched every minor detail that,
yeah.
a lot of other shows, they might mention it a little bit, but he was like right on point with everything.
Absolutely. He was devoted to being true to it, and he just knew everything. He knew things that Tony and Jerry had never even thought of.
I'd love to have a contest with him because I bet you we'd come pretty close. I bet you we'd come pretty close because he's pretty sharp.
That would be great. That would be great. No, I had a great time working with him, and so I really hope I'll be happy to listen to that podcast.
We are going to take a break right here and pause the interview. We are going to continue next week. Janice Kent was so generous with her time that it was way too long for one episode, almost not enough for two, but we're going to go ahead and break it into two, and we look forward to the second part of our conversation with Janice Kent next week on the Fancounters Celebrity Podcast. You can follow us on Twitter at Fancounters Live. I have made a New Year's resolution to try and update the Twitter much more often, and maybe, just maybe, the Fancounters Live Instagram account will get some love too. We'll have to see. I'm not promising on that one, but we'll do better on Twitter. If you want to contact us directly, please email hello@fancounters.com. Join us again next week for the conclusion of our interview with Janice Kent, and there are lots more stories to come. You won't want to miss it. We'll see you next week.